Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me because I am sat outside the Smiler Alton Towers and it is really loud. Hello and welcome to today's vlog. Today I am at Alton Towers and today I'm going to be talking to you about what the disability access and how accessible Alton Towers is. So before our trip I checked out the Alton Towers website. I had a good look round on the website at their disability information. It's really easy to find. They have a whole page on accessibility and it tells you the things you need to know. You can hire wheelchairs at Alton Towers, but it is advised you pre-book the wheelchair because it's a little bit first come first serve. Most of the rides are accessible. They have lots of accessible toilets and a lot of the toilets have hoists and changing facilities in them, which is great. Yeah, the website is really useful and I definitely recommend you check it out before you go because it does give you a little bit of information about the sort of accessibility you're going to be able to expect whilst you're there, and it also tells you about the ride access pass, which is really good if you can't stand in queues for a long period of time. So you basically have the ride access pass and are given a time to come back to the ride later, so you don't have to wait in a queue, which is really good. So I would definitely recommend checking out the website before you go. It also has this really handy table which you can actually print off and take with you. It wasn't too much hassle to take that with us, and on this table it tells you all of the information you need to get on a ride. So it tells you what access there is, if it's wheelchair accessible, and what conditions you need to be able to ride it. For example, if you can't grip, you can't ride certain rides. So yeah, really handy website. Definitely check it out before you go. Why you want to go on that, mate?
I'm so looking forward to this one.
So if you want to go down to this bottom part of Oblivion to look at the ride going into the tunnel, you can't be in a wheelchair because the only access is via stairs, so bear that in mind if you're just going down there to have a look at the ride. You cannot if you're in a wheelchair. Oblivion is accessible, but you must be able to transfer from your own chair into the ride vehicle, but there is assistance available. You can use a ride access pass for this, and it says you must be able to grip and put pressure with at least 3 of your limbs, and you must be able to keep your head upright with no assistance. So I think it's really useful to download the app. The app shows you a map. You can access all the waiting times. There is accessibility information on here, and also it tells you where all the toilets are, which toilets are disabled, and what kind of equipment each toilet has. So the app is really useful, and like I said, it's got all the waiting times as well, which is useful to have. So I would definitely recommend downloading the app. Look out for the signs that tell you where the ride access pass line is or where the wheelchair access is. If you struggle, you can always ask someone for assistance. So this is Enterprise. Enterprise is another ride that is accessible from your wheelchair, so you must be able to transfer from your wheelchair to the ride, but you can take your wheelchair right up to the ride. In order to ride the Smiler, you must be able to walk 25 steps. You cannot transfer from your wheelchair directly onto this ride, so bear that in mind. You also you can ride with a prosthetic limb if you have one, and you must be able to grip and keep your head upright with no assistance. Alton Towers is a huge park. The majority of it is accessible, and certain parts of the garden are accessible as well, but it is really, really hilly. Neil had a bit of a nightmare pushing me up some of the hills in my wheelchair. I certainly wouldn't have been able to manually propel myself up some of those hills, and if I was walking, there is no way I could have made it around this park without being in serious pain. So please bear that in mind if and when you visit Alton Towers. Okay, you can get going.
You want to come down, guys? Put your this blue one, guys.
Thank you.
For some reason, when they built this station, they built the platform a bit lower, so I'd recommend you take your wheelchair backwards. Just because of a bit of a step.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
The Sky Ride is accessible to wheelchairs, and you access via a separate entrance. Because the cars didn't stop moving, we did find getting on and off a little bit scary, but once we were on, it was fine. And as I mentioned earlier, the park is really huge. The Sky Ride is a really handy way of getting from one side of the park to the other. We're on the Sky Ride now, going from one side of the park to the other, because it is a big old park. So far everywhere's been really accessible, it just is really big and really hilly, so I think if you're in a wheelchair and someone has to push you, then they should bear that in mind, or if you maneuver yourself in a wheelchair, you should bear that in mind. But yeah, no, it's all pretty accessible.
Guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Down in the dark forest you have Rita and 13. Both you are able to transfer from your wheelchair to the ride, and you can take your wheelchair right down to the ride entrance, so that's really good. And there are no real restrictions on either of these. Neil really enjoyed Nemesis. He went on it a couple of times. It was one of his favourites of the day. This ride, you are able to transfer from your chair onto the ride vehicle with assistance, and you could use the access pass on this ride as well. You must be able to grip and put pressure on with 3 limbs, and you must be able to keep your head upright with no assistance, and you can ride on this ride if you have a prosthetic limb, and you can put pressure on your feet to steady yourself if required. There are plenty of places to eat, but not many gluten-free options. I did manage to get a hot chocolate though, which was okay. Another ride Neil really enjoyed was Galactica. We went on a Friday in term time, so the park was really quiet. Most things were a walk on, so Neil got to go on a few things more than once. He also had paid for a fast pass, which meant he could get on some of the rides a lot quicker, which was really good. Galactica looked like a lot of fun, and again it was another ride where you could transfer directly from your wheelchair onto the ride vehicle. One of the restrictions for this ride is that you cannot ride it if you have your foot in a cast or ankle or leg brace.
Yeah, okay.
Whilst we were there, it was Oktoberfest. Alton Towers put on a lot of events throughout the year, and they all happen on sort of this main grass part near the lake. It is worth noting that this year they put extra matting in at the entrances to the green part where the booths and stands and things are, but the rest of it is just grass. It isn't ideal for the wheelchair. I don't have an off-road wheelchair, so there's no way we could have coped on that grass, and luckily it was quite dry that day, but if it had been rainy or muddy, I don't think we would have coped on the grass at all. So just keep that in the back of your mind if you are going to Alton Towers and want to attend some of these events. The grass isn't terribly accessible. Although down on the bottom end of this grass area on the lake side, there is a wheelchair accessible part of the grass. So there is matting that goes from the path to a small area with some benches that is fully wheelchair accessible. Wickerman is another ride where you can transfer from your wheelchair onto the ride vehicle, so you can take your wheelchair right down to the ride vehicle, and you can also use your ride access pass on this ride as well. A huge amount of the rides at Alton Towers are wheelchair accessible in that you can transfer from your wheelchair straight onto the ride vehicle. Rides like Mixtape, Roller Disco, Funk and Fly, Hex and the Gangster Granny ride, only certain areas of those rides are accessible via a wheelchair, so bear that in mind. The only ride where you can't transfer from your wheelchair onto the ride vehicle is the Smiler. Everything in CBeebies Land pretty much is accessible. All in all, it's a really good park if you're disabled. Toilet facilities are great. Other than the park being very large and very hilly, it's actually really easy to get around in a wheelchair. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm really thankful that I had Neil there to push me around, because I couldn't have manually propelled myself up some of those hills. But I'd love to hear your experience. If you visited Alton Towers as a disabled person, get in touch and let me know what your experience was like. Bear in mind, disabled parking is not free. You will have to pay for it like everybody else, but the disabled car park is right next to the entrance. You will need to show your blue badge to access this car park, but it is obviously a lot closer and easier. It is 4 o'clock and I think we're pretty much done for the day. Neil's been on all the rides he wanted to ride. Some of them he has ridden more than once. Did you ride anything 3 times? No. So he's done some of the rides twice. And he tells me he's had a very nice day. He is currently eating a giant hot dog. No, it's not a hot dog, it's a bratwurst because it's Oktoberfest. But yeah, so we've had a very nice day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with another video.